So in this video, I want to talk specifically about using the Myers-Briggs for parenting and using it with your children. So if you haven't seen it already, I recommend you watch the basic introduction listed below. And in this video, I want to speak about parenting. So when, as a parent, you watch your kids grow, you know all the ins and outs of their personality. And so with their Myers-Briggs personality type, it often isn't between 5 and 7 that we really get a clear sense of what their type might be. But I'll be talking about kind of parenting around the 8 different functions. So when you look at extroversion versus introversion, so I want to be careful that you want to be careful because young kids under 5, they pretty much process like an extrovert. What they're talking is what they're thinking. And I know when my eldest, oh my God, he would wake up at 5 in the morning and he would not stop talking till 8 o'clock at night. I'd have to be there. Michael, lay down, stop talking. And I was shocked when I heard from his preschool teacher at 3 that he was a very shy kid. And I was like, what? This kid doesn't stop talking. But that's just how kids process. And he is definitely now, I see, an introvert. So don't let the early verbal processing kind of catch you off guard. This is one we may not have a clear sense of it till they're 6 or 7. So as we know, extroverts talk to think, and their default focus is on the outside world, which again, most young kids, that's where their focus will be. Where introverts, they often will form their ideas in their head, and when they speak, it'll be a very well thought out statement that they make. And they also, their default attention is their inner world. So my eldest is definitely an introvert. My youngest is an extrovert. And so with my eldest, like when he is reading a book, he is so in that world, he really does not hear me. And it takes a fair amount of energy to get his attention. He also, as a kid, he could play a game like Minecraft, and then he takes it and he creates this inner world, this imaginary world of Minecraft, or whatever book he's reading. He creates his own imaginary games in his head. And this is just how he processes. And so he's clearly an introvert. In terms of that inner world is where his default attention, and getting him to focus on the external world is really frustrating, especially when it comes, he doesn't see shoes and jackets, and a lot of that doesn't even faze him. He doesn't even process it as messy in his mind. I have to actually literally teach him, this is a mess in mommy's mind, and it's stressful for me to look at, and even if it's not stressful for you to look at, because his default attention is his internal world, you still need to pick it up on a regular basis. And so just that understanding that difference between, how his mind processes and mine, quite frankly, that it allows me to be a lot more patient with him, explain it in a way that's not demeaning, and to understand that difference and approach it in a much more strategic and useful way. So again, kids who are introverts are going to want to think through things before they come and talk to their parents about them. So giving them a little bit of time to process, especially as we get into middle school and high school years, it makes a lot of sense for that. For a more introverted type, where the extroverted types are the type we're using a lot of questions to help them think through things, especially again when you get to more middle and high school problems, asking open-ended questions to help mentor them, and allowing them to talk things out is more important for the extroverted child. So looking at sensing versus intuition. So again, I think my boys are different on this. My youngest is a sensing type, my eldest is an intuitive type. And so the sensing type, they love to collect lots of little things. And my youngest son created multiple forts in the house that needed to remain intact for months, that were just all little things that he loved, but there was no pattern to how he laid them out. It was just, he just would put them in this fort and not in a way that didn't have a particular pattern. But those details were something that were very, very important to him. He could remember each gem that was in each, little row. And so kids, I think, do really start out as a more sensing type, especially preschool aged. But you will see that there's that attention to detail. And so knowing with this child that I need to focus and give instructions in a much more detailed way is helpful. And to be respectful of, to him, all of those little things he collects are really, really important. Where with the intuitive type child, they're the ones who need to see the big picture. And boy, from a young age, my eldest is the intuitive type, I learned that I had to give him the big picture for the purpose, for every rule that I had for him. And then he would work with it. He needed to understand it. He needed to, because he's also a thinker, there needed to be this logical understanding and the big picture of what this little behavior or rule, whatever I had, was, and how that fits into the bigger picture. And so they need that context more and explanation more often for whatever it is that you're having them do. Let's see, so next we have thinking versus feeling. And so it's funny, and I think this is true for everyone, but you'll notice with the thinkers, their kind of go-to default emotion tends to be anger. Where with the feeling type, their most common default emotion tends to be fear. So in the same stressful situation, my eldest can get angry at it, my youngest will be scared, because I've got a thinker and a feeler. And so it's important to make sure that, you know, each child has a full range of emotions, and because whatever situation makes you angry usually can make you scared in one way or another, and vice versa. So with kids who are thinkers, having things that are fair and logical are very important. So you know, explaining the rules and why and the reason behind it is very important for a thinker. I think it's important for all of us. We all like that, but it's especially important for them. And so just saying, you know, because I said so, really angers this type, because they have a need to understand the logic behind it. So it's important to talk about the rationale for things with thinking types. So with feeling types, their biggest fear is that you're mad at them. And oftentimes that really puts them into a tizzy and makes it hard for them to focus or hard for them to do anything else. So emotional safety is particularly important. I mean, it's important in every family relationship, but it's particularly important with a feeling type, because even if they think you're in a bad mood, that will affect a feeling child much more than it will affect a thinking child. Sometimes people mistake this for gender, but it's really more, are you feeling dominant or thinking dominant? So being aware of how the feeling child is much more attuned to everyone's emotion in the room, having everyone be happy. And this child is, you know, with my child, I actually had to take his money out of his wallet, because if he came over and had a play date, he would just hand his money to people because he liked them and he just wanted to give gifts. And this kid gives gifts to everyone. And that's part of what makes a feeling child happy. So I don't want to stop him altogether, but I just gave him singles, you know, to give to his friends. And I do allow him, but that's very much part of how a feeler is wired and what brings them joy. And because they love to build relationships, they love to make other people happy. But you need to teach this child, your children, your feeling child from a young age to respect boundaries, to make sure that they don't give too much, so that they learn not to get hurt or to be taken advantage of. So with the feeling type, you have to be looking out for these types of issues. And it's very important when there is tension between you, or you're setting rules and limits, that it is not personal, it's just a rule, and that you love them very much. And to use parenting styles where you don't raise your voice, you don't use anger to parent or to set limits and consequences. You want to be very matter of fact. I always think of it, do you want to be good cop or bad cop? You know, good cop writes, you write you a ticket, you were speeding, ma'am, you know, here's your ticket, have a nice day, right? That's the good cop. Where, you know, the nasty cop, the mean cop is like, you know, you were a danger, you could have killed, you could have, and they read you the riot act, they, you know, assassinate your character, and they're like, there you go, and there's no have a nice day at the end of that conversation. So, especially with feeling types of kids, you need to parent with very little emotion. I like to use the magic 1, 2, 3 method, where that's a 1, you don't say anything else, that's a 2, That's a 3. And you only explain what the rule is if they don't know what it is, it's the first time they're doing it. But if they know the rule is, I've told you to, stop playing video game and you aren't stopping, you just count them. 1, you give them 30, 60 seconds to a 2, 30 to 60 seconds, 3, put them on a timeout for a minute per age, and then they're done. No lecture. No, why don't you listen to me? No, you should, you ought to. If you don't, none of that. No threats, no lecture. Just 1, 2, 3, take your time out, and everything's fine. Everything's chill, but very non-emotional in terms of how you set consequences and limits. So finally, we get to the judging versus perceiving child. So the judging child, they need that structure more. All kids need structure. Judging kids need it a lot more, and they're more anxious when they don't have it. So making sure that there is clear structure, communication when the plans change or the routine changes for these kids, because that structure really helps them feel safe, and it makes them feel at peace. And you'll notice your kids are judging types because everything needs to be organized. Everything's got a little system to it, a little place. They keep things in their places. They're usually neater. You can notice the difference because one of mine is judging, one of mine is perceiving. I'm pretty sure my kids are opposite. I hope they don't drive each other crazy when they get older. So that's the judging type, because my younger child is several times neater than my older child. So the perceiving type, they don't have that need for structure as much. They are much more flexible when it comes to schedules. They often, the need, because to actually be neat, put your shoes, your backpack, your jacket, everything away at the same time. That's a very judging mental frame, where the perceiving type is, they don't really remember where it's not important to them. There's not that coming in and doing that 5-step procedure where you put all your stuff. It is not wired into them. You have to go over and over and over. You need to have patience with it. But it is harder for the perceiving type to stick with those regimens and schedules and routines. It just takes them longer to get into it, to do it, and for it to be second nature to them, because it's not their nature. It is something that we are teaching them in order to keep our houses just livable, right? So with the perceiving child, though, they thrive on possibility, flexibility, creativity. They enjoy that sort of thing. And so making sure they have ample opportunities for that, and also understanding that the decision-making process is a little bit tougher for them at times, deciding whether they want to do soccer or gymnastics or whatever it might be. That is a little bit tougher. And as a parent, you kind of have to make the judgment call in terms of, how long they stick with things, because they often will have a little bit more a tougher time with sticking with things. And that's just also their nature. Like next shiny object, that's cool. I like doing this. I also like doing that. That's who they are. And, as a parent, you have to help guide them in how to navigate some of those things. So those are some of the differences in terms of how to parent kids using the Myers-Briggs. And I just think this system helps you be patient with your kids in certain areas and know that certain kids are going to take longer to learn certain things than others. And no matter what kid you got, 4 of these areas come easier than the others. And so each one's a plus, each one's got a liability too. So hopefully you found this useful in understanding and communicating with your kids.